Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Okay, welcome back to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We're so excited to have all of you listening, but even more so, we're excited for our special guest today. If you're listening on the day this comes out, it is Mother's Day. So first and foremost, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. And then second, Kyle and I thought we'd take the daring attempt or the risk of having our mothers on the podcast. Yeah. So today we are bringing you Diane, Bryant, and Elaine Baumstark, our mothers. So Diane and Mom, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean and Kyle. We appreciate being
Glad
here.
to be here.
Awesome. All right. Well, so to start off, we want to just kind of dip our toe in the water, give our listeners a little understanding of who you are. So we're going to start off with rapid fire questions. And these are pretty simple questions that you can answer. They're either or questions. All of mine anyway are either or questions. And Elaine, I'm gonna ask you, and Sean's gonna ask my mom. And so the trick with this segment is that you can't think, you just have to react. You just have to say it's like answer right away, and then we'll just go through all 5 questions. They're pretty simple. Okay. So are you ready?
Besides just answering right away, you can't justify your answer. There is no room for explanation. So it's either yes or no, or red or blue, or whatever the answer is. Nobody wants to know your reasoning behind it, at least not yet. So this will also give our listeners an idea of what voice belongs to what mother.
All right.
Okay.
Here we go. All right, Elaine Baumstark. Here is your first question. Do you prefer dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Do you prefer to be really hot, like hot weather, or really cold weather?
Hot.
When you're reading, do you prefer an e-reader or a paper book?
Paper book.
Nice. All right, if you're going to go on a vacation, would you prefer a remote beach in Mexico or a historic city in Europe?
Historic city in Europe.
And you have experienced both. Do you prefer Northern California or Southern California?
Northern California.
All right. So
that easy. She has some quick responses there.
Yeah, that last question, is that going to get you in trouble, like with your? Because I know do you have family in both Northern and Southern California?
All up and down the state.
All right. So is that answer going to get you in trouble with any one of those parties?
No.
No. All right. They love you no matter what.
Well, I think that's her way of saying nobody else listens to my show.
It'd be that too, yeah.
I'm surprised she gave an answer for... Well, yeah. Well, anyway. Thank you, Mom. Diane, you are up. So this is Kyle's mom, and I've got some questions for you. Are you ready?
All right. I'm ready.
Okay. I read your book, and many of our listeners have, so I know in one particular area you're called the Queen of Walmart. So my question for you, Do you prefer Target or Walmart?
Target.
Okay. And if you had the choice to go out on a Sunday afternoon for a flea market or a yard sale, which do you prefer?
Flea market.
Okay. And do you prefer to drink beer or wine?
Oh, a little of both. Maybe wine.
Okay. And be honest, do you prefer Colin or Kyle?
Yes.
Okay, good answer. Now, this one is, by the way, Colin is Kyle's brother. I'm sure most people might know that or could deduce. This one, actually, I am looking for a response here. It's also a little difficult, but when you're traveling, and Mike and Kyle, Mike is your husband, Kyle, of course, is your son. When you're traveling with both, who's more frustrating, your husband, Mike, or your son, Kyle?
Oh, dear. Oh, goodness. Both, I guess. Both,
Okay.
yeah, both.
Well, from the book, I think, and I talked about several spots where we had disagreements, right? And so
I think there's even one part in the book where, like, Mike, you take care of him, or whatever. Like, this is your son, or what, something like that.
Yes. We do play that game a lot.
All right. Well, I think some of our listeners will know I guess we've all had the privilege of being on a trip here and there with each other, and so I feel like I've seen everybody get frustrated with everybody else, so I thought we'd throw it out there.
It's true.
I like that.
It's family life.
Yeah, right?
All right.
All right, cool. Well, thank you.
So, moving on, I think we want to have each of you briefly give a snapshot of who you are, your life now, and how you got there. So, Elaine, I'll let you introduce yourself first. Just give us a decent snapshot. If you were going to introduce yourself to somebody new, and we have millions of listeners, so why don't you introduce yourself to everybody?
Hello, everybody. I am Elaine Baumstark. I am Sean Baumstark's mother.
Elaine, where do you live?
Keep going.
I'm currently in Pahrump, Nevada. Been there going on 2.5 years. I've spent a lot of my time in Northern California, as well as Central California. I was a stay-home mom and raised 6 children, Sean being the youngest of 6. And I don't know what else.
6 kids. How was that? Was it pretty crazy in your house with 6 kids?
Oh, there was never a dull moment. Yeah. But I married Sean's dad back in 1977. He had 2 children. I had 2 children from previous marriages, and then we had 2 children, which were Richard and Sean. So we had 6 children, and it was a handful just staying home taking care of them.
Wow. Yeah. How long? Like, how many years were there 6 kids in the house? Before everybody moved on and moved out of the house.
Well, Michael was 13 when he left, but he kept coming back and forth between his mom and dad, and so it was quite often, But Dana, Jack's daughter, she went and stayed, so we didn't have a whole lot of touch up with her there for a long while. But otherwise, we had at least 5 all the time.
Wow. That's a crazy household.
And
Good stuff.
Yeah, it was.
of course, my mom mentions I'm the youngest, which probably explains so much.
Yeah.
Go on,
Yes,
Sean.
it
What
does.
do you?
No, I think everybody out there, can understand when you're the baby. Well, I guess Kyle, you're the baby too. So, anyway,
Sean was able to learn a lot from his siblings, and therefore he was one of those children who knew better than to create issues or get himself into trouble because he knew what would happen. He didn't like being in trouble.
in other words, I was a perfect angel.
He knew
yeah.
how to avoid trouble and still get what he wants.
Basically, yes.
Well said.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, Diane, what about you? Give us a snapshot of what life has been like for you.
Well, I live in Chico, California, which is north of Sacramento. And I grew up in a little town next to Chico called Oroville, and I went to college at Chico State back in the day. And I'm married to Mike, Kyle's dad. And we moved to Chico after living 40 years near Grass Valley in the same house. We moved to Chico. Kyle's brother, Colin, lives here with his wife, Gina, and our two grandkids, Aubrey, who's 8, and Keller, who is 4. And we're really enjoying it here. We're both retired. I retired from teaching kindergarten and first grade at a Montessori school for 15 years in Rockland, California. And today I just went on a 30-mile bike ride with Chico Wildflower bike ride, and it was a great morning. We started early, so it was nice and cool. I also like to knit and read. I'm currently reading Lost Roses, and I can't remember the author's name. Yeah, I don't know. We have a trailer that we like to take camping, and favorite place is Bodega Bay on the coast.
Mom, if we didn't ride bikes, like if I never found a trike and wasn't on my bike, do you think you would have ridden your bike today?
No. I don't think so. We always had bikes, and during the summertime when you kids were younger, like, maybe 8 through 12 or 15 or something like that, Dad would go with us, or sometimes just you and Colin, we would go up to Lake Tahoe and ride 20 miles on the lake trail there and then come back home. But, we didn't do rides like we do now, and probably would not have.
So a question for you, talking about riding today, of course, most people are going to know how Kyle and I got together and the different rides that we've been involved in. And of course, Kyle's day job basically is riding his bicycle or his trike. My question for you, Diane, right? Would you rather be in the saddle, like pedaling, or in the RV? You've done both, so which do you prefer?
I think I'd rather be in the RV because I am worn out right now. I don't think I could get on my bike tomorrow and ride another 30 miles, You'd
be surprised if you had to, though, to get to your goal.
Yeah.
And if you planned on it, you might,
job.
Yeah. If people are counting on you.
Maybe, I guess. I guess I'd have a different frame of mind.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Elaine, can you tell us something that most people don't know about Sean? That only his mom would know.
Well.
And Sean is really nervous right now.
I know that when Sean was growing up, he was real particular about his hair. And he would spend hours in the bathroom fixing his hair. And I used to laugh at him because he would take more time in the bathroom than me, and I'd do my hair and put my makeup on. But his hair had to be just right.
That's funny.
And then when he took off and went to college and went out on his own, then he'd come home with this raggedy hairdo. It was like he never even combed it when he got out of bed. I thought that was
That's
Nice.
funny.
I
I remember those years. Every hair was perfectly placed.
Every
Yeah.
That's nice. Every strand, had its spot.
You know what's embarrassing is
perfect.
what's embarrassing about that is a little bit of that comes out in our documentary. You know, there's that quick scene where I'm adjusting my collar or something, and you start making fun of me.
Your collar was ironed that day or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm definitely.
I remember one.
Go ahead.
I remember one time when Sean got really angry at me. He came out of the bedroom. We're living in Fairfield, and he was getting ready to go somewhere. And he's got his shirt on, and he comes in and says, "Mom, will you plug your iron in, and then iron this collar down for me, but don't burn my neck." Well, guess what his mom did?
So stupid.
Oh my gosh, ironing with the shirt on?
That was the mistake.
Yeah,
I
because
left
he
the
was
shirt
in a
on.
hurry.
Yep.
Jeez.
Oh my
That
God.
was dumb.
I was home from I was on college break, so I was
college,
20. Like I knew better. I wasn't 7, but that's definitely a memory in my head too. My oldest brother actually was staying with my parents at the time, and he did nothing but laugh at us. That whole thing.
So, did anyone get injured in the iron incident?
No, it's a quick just burn. Of course, I jumped out of the way, but I learned my lesson. And for those of you who would think it's fine, you should not iron your clothes while you're wearing them.
All right. Lesson learned.
Lesson learned. All right, Diane, same question for you. This one, I would think might be a little hard, given Kyle's job and book and his life. But can you tell us anything that you think maybe only you and the family might be aware of?
Yeah, it was hard, but I did think of something because his life is such an open book. But what I did think of, I'm afraid it's not very funny. It's serious. He is very good with his money. He's I don't want to say he just knows how to take care of his money. And if you go to his apartment and look on his bookshelf, at least the last time I was there, he has 5 books on how to manage your money, and he's read them all.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just wish that translated into other areas of my life. I got my stuff together in one area, but
well, and it's a very important area.
Sure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so good. And tell me the part about Dad said you should save 15% of every paycheck or your monthly wages or what?
Yep.
And you've always done that?
Well, not always. I finally got up to my 15% recently, but if I had been doing it since Dad told me to, because he told me that when I got my first job, I was like 15, 16, whatever that was, at a lifeguard. And he told me that, but I think I spent my tax return, I remember, on a BMX bike that I couldn't even ride very well anyway. But if I had listened to Dad, I think I would be a rich man right now.
I feel like we could probably everybody could say that. How did I just listen to my mom or my dad or whoever your parent figure was? We'd be so much better off today.
I agree. So Elaine, can you tell us about a time that Sean embarrassed you? You told us when you guys were mad at each other or something with the ironing, but when did Sean embarrass you? When you're like, I don't even know who that's something my kid.
I don't know him.
Yeah. I can't remember a time when Sean embarrassed me. I embarrassed him more than he ever embarrassed me.
Oh.
So
All right,
I
Sean.
can't.
Sean, can you tell us about a time when your mom embarrassed you?
Oh, jeez. Gosh, no, I don't think I can. I think
let me refresh your memory.
Okay.
You were in grade school, and we were doing a duet at church. Do you remember that one?
No, but that by itself is embarrassing. So there. That's an embarrassing moment. The fact that I used to sing in church is embarrassing. But no, I don't remember where you're going with that story.
Yeah, no, I want to hear this.
Well, we were doing a duet together, and I missed saying a word, and he looked at me, and I embarrassed him. I could see him turning red.
Yep,
because I said a different word from the lyrics, and he never sang with me again.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I don't. Those younger years, it's whatever. I think nothing of it. Diane, was there anything embarrassing for you as Kyle was writing his book? Like, of course, we alluded to the Queen of Walmart. Remember the whole story, the palm tree, whatever it is, the ugly thing you bought, or whatever it was. Did he have to beg you for permission to share that story, or you didn't care?
No.
Where were you at?
I actually, I didn't care. And when I read it, I was okay with any of those stories. But it also reinforced the fact that I thought I knew what his day was like when we were traveling, but he had no idea what my day was like. I had a lot of free time, which I don't think he understood that.
Sure.
That, they would leave at 8:30, and I would clean up the trailer and get it all packed up, ready to move on. And then I would drive for 50 miles or wherever our next stop was, and park the trailer and get it set up. I would go to the grocery store. I would go to the Walmart, the super Walmart, and I could get groceries there and a new T-shirt and whatever else I wanted. My fingernails done, and then be back in time to cook dinner and all that. So he didn't know that I had maybe extra time allotted.
I think that I thought that you should be using that time for something productive for the trip.
to sit and think about the next meal? Like, what do you mean? What is she gonna do?
I don't know, but I think that's what caused me to freak out a little bit. Was like, we're riding our bikes all day, and all we can think about is, the concrete in front, the asphalt in front of us, and the strip and what it means and stuff. We come back and there's this metal palm tree, like, shoved in the closet, like, that she just bought off the side of the road. Oh my God. Well, you know what? I felt bad about that, about blowing up, but, thinking about it now, I'm like, that was justified.
That's Typical son speak right there.
And honey, I didn't care, even at the time. I didn't care. I'm like, whatever. Keep riding your bicycle.
I think that's why we get along, because I tend to get pissed off sometimes, and you're like, yeah, whatever, dude.
Yep. I think we all know, especially when you're family, we all know at the end of the day, you'll get over it, right? You'll be fine tomorrow or at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I think, Diane, you said something that I think is good to correlate here with the overall theme of our podcast, and of course everything that Kyle and I do outside of the podcast. But you said something like Kyle didn't know what kind of day you had, and I know I'm taking a bit of a right turn here, but that idea is so true in life, especially when somebody is up against a hardship or a disability or a challenge. You never know what somebody else is facing. Now, I know in this story you had time to kill, but in any other situation of life, somebody might do something, and we might be offended by it or ticked off by it or bothered by it. But really, so much is going on behind the scenes that you or I or somebody else may never know, that person just lost a loved one or just got a crazy bill from the IRS, or, their house just burned down or whatever. Like, stuff goes wrong all the time. And I like the way you put that. I think it's a reminder for us to understand that as we walk through life, there will always be people with the elements of their life that we will never know. And hopefully that challenges everybody to, I don't know, be a little more gracious, I guess, in the way we approach humanity.
I agree. Yeah, with your mom or with anyone else.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Well, be kind.
I agree.
So with that, I know, like I said, I took a bit of a right turn, make it a little not serious, but a little profound. Diane, can you tell us something that you are most proud of when it comes to Kyle?
Well, I think I know what I am very proud of is how he has taken this disease and turned it to something so positive for himself and for others. It's so incredibly difficult to do. I don't know how that happened. And so I'm very proud that he's able to do that.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing.
Awesome.
Thank you. I think it's a team effort too. I think somebody asked me the other night, I was doing a talk at a book signing, and it said, how are you so positive? And I was like, well, I think I always have been, and I think everyone is to a certain extent, but I think that part of somebody can be squashed, and it has to be nurtured. And so, no matter whether it's extreme in me or whether it's, to what extent it is in each person, I think that part of each of us can either be nurtured or it can be squashed. And in my case, it was nurtured. And so that's one of the things that I'm really grateful for. I want you to think back to when you first found out about Friedreich's ataxia. What do you remember about the time when Sean got diagnosed with FA?
I wasn't with Sean, as you know, when he was diagnosed, but when he came home and was sharing with his dad and I of this disease, I couldn't even pronounce it, much less spell it. And I told him, and my first response was that he needed to go get a second opinion because his dad and I both were healthy and we didn't understand what was happening.
Right.
And I refused to dwell on it. I wasn't ready to deal with it. And it took me 2 to 3 months to finally accept it. His dad was on the computer one morning as I'm getting ready to go to work, and he's reading about Friedreich's ataxia. And I'm standing there looking at this, and I'm thinking, this can't be happening. By the time I got to work, one of my coworkers had called me from the office and asked me how I was doing. And she never did that before. And as I'm trying to share with her, I can't even get any words out when I think it's called a nervous breakdown. And I had to go and tell my boss that I had to go home. I had to go to Sacramento, actually, to go see Sean, because I needed to see him and make sure he was still Sean. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm now trying to figure this all out, and yet at the same time, I need to do it with Sean. I can't do it an hour away. I needed to go see him that very moment. And so his dad came to pick me up from work, and I took off. We took off to go and spend some time with Sean, so we could learn more about this disease. It was very hard for me, very difficult, and there are times when I still don't even want to think about it.
Yes. Well, Elaine, I think you touch on something that I think about a lot. The concept of the disease being separate from the person. And I think that's sort of what you were saying a little bit, is like you needed to go see Sean because there was this thing that was threatening to take over his life and to ruin everyone's life. But it wasn't Sean. Like you needed him, not I don't know, separate from the disease, even though you probably realized that this thing was coming, you wanted to make sure that he was still there and that Sean was still going to come through despite this disease. And I think that's truly what happens every day, too.
Yes, absolutely.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's easy to assume, or not even assume, but just think something as devastating as FA or any other diagnosis it can be derailing. It can knock people off their rocker either for a while or long term, or it can be just a speed bump in the road. Thankfully, for all of us, it's been kind of viewed as a speed bump, a hurdle to work around or to work through, and not necessarily something that caused us to maybe get to a point where we give up hope and sit on the couch all day.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
I agree.
Right.
And I think, Kyle, you make a good point. In even your mom's word, Diane, you said something about cheering people on, and I think that's true in their community. Thankfully, the FA and our families, even outside FA, are such incredible people and warm-hearted individuals that constantly pat us on the back and encourage us to get through whatever challenge presents itself, which makes it, I would think, a little bit easier to get up and put one foot in front of the other.
Yep, I agree. Big time.
So, just for the sake of context, most of our listeners will remember I was 25 before I was diagnosed, and I was living on my own about an hour away from my parents. Kyle, it was a completely different scenario for you. And Diane, you were still paying Kyle's bills and probably wiping his butt in diapers or whatever. Not really, but I mean, he was middle teenage years before you guys started seeing symptoms. So, Diane, talk about the diagnosis from your perspective and what that did to maybe the home life.
Well, I think, first of all, it was so frustrating trying to get the diagnosis that the doctor we went to in Auburn just kind of ignored it, and we didn't really get a diagnosis for maybe almost a year. And we had some other friends helping us talk to their doctors in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And I think when we finally got the diagnosis, there was this small amount of relief. You know, when you can name something, even if it's horrible, there's something about it that makes you feel better about it.
Yeah.
And then I think it took us a while to really find out what that diagnosis meant and what it was. We didn't find that information on the internet was very good at the time, or maybe we weren't very good searchers. I don't know. Mike finally sat down and just searched and searched and searched till he found some information. Phone numbers we were given and emails we were given. We would send messages. We would never hear back from the people. So that all was very frustrating, I think, till we found the doctor in Southern California. The other thing is that even though we had a diagnosis, Kyle was the same for a long time. We got the diagnosis when he was still in high school, and he was still able to walk and get around past his college years. So in some ways, having the diagnosis wasn't a lot different because there was no cure, right? There was nothing to do to help him but watch this horrible thing unfold. And so for quite a few years, nothing was different. Do you know what I mean? From when the day we got the diagnosis, we just knew it was coming.
Yeah. So,
do you think
Mom,
you think that's true, Kyle?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously, there were my balance and coordination was starting to be progressively compromised, but I could still do all the things that I used to. Like, I didn't have to use a wheelchair, and I didn't have to modify that many things very much. Maybe I couldn't play a few sports that I used to be able to or whatever, but so I think you're right. But so I want to ask you this, like, because of something that we think about and talk about in the rare disease world all the time is like pre-symptomatic testing. Like, what if I was tested when I was 5 years old and it said I had Friedreich's ataxia, but there was nothing you could do about it? You couldn't even tell, right? We wouldn't even be able to tell till I was 14 or whatever.
Right.
How would that change things about just how you approached life and risk and whatever else, sports and just adventure and everything with this kid who was diagnosed with a debilitating disease, but it might not even be here for another 10 years.
Yeah. I don't know what we would have done different. I can't even think, because I'm sure we would have still encouraged you to play baseball and join Boy Scouts and, do any of the activities that you played football at high school. I don't know that any of that would have changed, right? We would have encouraged you to do as much as you can now while you can, right?
Yeah. Just how did you perceive Sean's reaction to his diagnosis? What was Sean's reaction?
I think he was somewhat disappointed that he was now having to deal with something that none of us knew anything about. But yet he was determined that he wasn't going to allow it to get him down. it's almost like he took it by the horns, but yet at the same time, a little bit of resistance, not knowing himself what he was dealing with.
Yep.
And now he's got a better handle on his life, and he's determined that he's not going to let this disease, get in his way.
Yep. Yeah.
He's got determination and goals, and he's determined to do what he desires to do in life, and he's going to live life to the fullest now. It was just at the very, very beginning, he had hesitations, not knowing what to do.
I think that happens with all of us, right? You can't take the bull by the horns if you don't know what the bull looks like, if you don't know where the bull is. And
right.
So, it was a process, I think, for all of us to learn as much as we can about FA so that we know where to grab. We know where those horns are.
Exactly.
And so, I think of the way you describe Sean handling it is facing up to it and being like, all right, FA, degenerative disease, I'm probably going to die early. Let's do this. Let's go right now. And, I think that's a really incredible way to handle things. And it's something that we can all learn from, and we do all the time.
If you were chatting with somebody that was brand new to the FA community or a similar diagnosis, how would you encourage them to continue moving forward? Diane, I feel like you may have had this question before, so if you don't mind, I'll have you answer that one first, then we'll see what my mom can add to it.
Sure. Well, I've talked with other people who have been newly diagnosed, and it's so very hard at first. And I'm afraid they look at Kyle and they look at Mike and me and think, I don't feel like them. I don't do what they do. I'm in a mess. We have Friedreich's ataxia. And I think you have to be patient with yourself. You have to take care of each other. You have to communicate and be patient. It was 10 years before we figured out what we wanted to do was some fundraising. And that Kyle figured out this recumbent bicycle and a trip across country and those kinds of things. So I feel like I know people just want it's such a horrible feeling. People want it to be okay now, and that's so hard. And fortunately, in Kyle's case, we had a lot of years before it started getting so bad that he needed a wheelchair, and that was good. I don't know that everybody gets that kind of time, I think being patient with yourself and talking with your child is just, Kyle and I have talked and talked and talked over the years, and just about his life or Friedreich's ataxia or whatever. And I just think keeping communication and checking in with them is real important too.
And maybe
I also think
go for it. Yeah.
It was important to you eventually to meet some other people. Where we live, we didn't know any other people till we met Sean that had Friedreich's ataxia in Grass Valley, Auburn, and Sean was in Sacramento. We didn't really know any other people who had that disease, and so you went to a couple of conferences with us hoping to meet some people, and one was very successful, and you met lots of people, and we had a good time, and so that's another important thing for people to know, that going to a conference and meeting other people with your same disability.
Yep. All right, Elaine, same question. What advice would you give to a newly diagnosed family?
You have to allow the individual to be themselves and to live life, without restrictions. You have, and the parents or the family, they have to be themselves. You don't have to change because of this disease. Life changes in itself. And Diane also said to communicate, and she's very right. You have to communicate with each other. I know there were times when I wanted to be able to help Sean do something, and he needed to do it himself. You just can't barge right in and do things for the people when you know they have any kind of disability. You have to allow them to be themselves and do for themselves until they ask for the help. Right. You can't handle them with kid gloves. They want to have a life. They need to have that life, regardless of what disabilities we face. I grew up with an aunt that was born without arms. She had to experience and live life herself, but we were there to help whenever she needed that help. But she was allowed to become the person that she is. And I believe that goes with any disability. And the other thing is, don't walk in fear because of any and all disabilities. We each have our own disabilities. Some are more noticeable than others. We can't walk in fear. We got to look on life as a positive and live life accordingly. The last one is to love each other, regardless.
Yes. Yes.
Elaine and Diane Bryant, my mother, thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, for laughing with us today, and in the past and in the future as well. Thank you so much.
And I'll say,
thank you for having us.
Since Kyle says thank you for today in the show, I believe Kyle would also say thank you for everything you guys have done for being patient with us, for driving SAG with us, for showing up with us, for doing our laundry, all these little things that have made life better for Kyle and I. Thank you so much for everything that you've even done for, like, Diane, you've done a lot for me. Elaine, I'm sure you've done a few things for Kyle.
Yep, absolutely.
Whatever the trip or event or thing is, I can definitely look at Diane and say she's one of my moms, and I would. I just think it's just a great community to be a part of, and I'm thankful that you two have loved us unconditionally and encouraged us to do whatever the heck we want.
Well, you are welcome. It's always fun with you two. Never a dull one.
Yes, that is true, Diane.
All right. Well, happy Mother's Day to both of you and to all the mothers out there.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast.
Find us online at twodisableddudes.com and please subscribe on the iTunes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And special thanks to our audio producer, Jake Tompkins.
Until next time, keep living with urgency.